Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Blue Stable Podcast. It is just us two today, but hey, we still got some content for you. This is kind of breaking news, even though it happened earlier, but we couldn't do it alone. I got my guy with me, my road dog, Landon. How we doing tonight?
Oh, you know it. You call me Road Dog, so I had to throw a little. Or wait, no, it's a. Oh, I can't even think. What did Road Dog used to do in WWF?
Oh, you didn't know?
Oh, you didn't know? You better call somebody.
Yep.
Um, yeah, man, what's going on? Everything's going good for here. Me and you getting ready to hit the road here on Monday, heading out to the Senior Bowl, driving down together. Yeah, going to be pretty awesome stuff. So excited for that. But yeah, got some great news to talk about today. Got some possible head coaching stuff going on as well with the Colts, and we're ready to get into it.
Yeah, man, it's going to be interesting. We got to talk about this move because this move can potentially have an effect for the Colts moving forward, especially when it comes to the NFL draft. But before we get into that, we got to talk about the question mark in Carolina. First of all, congratulations to Frank Reich for landing the job. I think all Colts fans knew he was going to get a job eventually. And after the meeting with Carolina, we was like, that would be a good land spot for him, and they wound up doing it. But before we get into Frank Reich, we got to mention Steve Wilks. Steve Wilks, a lot of Panthers fans were still rooting for Wilks. After he took over Rule's position after they got rid of him midseason, and Wilks happened to turn the corner with the organization and them. They seen a little bright spot, and they think if they gave him a full year, that some fans thought that he could have a chance at head coaching for that team. But let me get your thoughts on Steve Wilks before we move forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, the guy took over a bad situation there with Matt Rule as an interim head coach, and he more or less succeeded. They were in the playoff hunt. He brought them back from the abyss to be in that hunt and possibly winning their division up until the last couple weeks of the season. So it is possible for an interim coach to have success. Who would have thought? Um, instead of making excuses about the situation that he inherited, he kind of buckled down and got them playing really good football. And it was really cool to watch. I think he does deserve a shot somewhere as a head coach eventually. Unfortunately, that was not in Carolina this year. I think they wanted to go in more of an offensive direction, which kind of leads us into what we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because I thought he showed a lot in what he could do, but I also understand their thinking moving forward with Frank Reich. But yeah, kudos to Steve Wilks, man. God did a hell of a job there, and he's going to get his shot sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was kind of insane when you compare to both situations, and it almost was in the same situation as the Indianapolis Colts when you come to the quarterback conversation because, they started with Baker and then they transferred quarterbacks from there, and they was just switching. They had a carousel of their own. Now, of course, it didn't last like 3 years, but like the Colts, but they had one mid-season, and when they wound up getting rid of Baker, and they still was trying to figure out who was going to be a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean they also had three quarterbacks that they cycled through. Of course, Baker Mayfield, and they went to PJ Walker, who Colts fans should know, practice squad guy here. So they were starting one of our practice squad guys and having success. They were winning games. Then they ended up going to Sam Darnold later in the year. Sam Darnold was playing really good football as well. He was not necessarily. I don't know if you want to move forward with him as your franchise guy, but he was making some good plays and brought. Like I said, they were on the verge of winning that division. Unfortunately, things didn't fall their way, but I mean, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it really is, man. Wilkes, he's been coaching for a very long time, as here it says since 1995. He's been all over the place, college and the NFL. Illinois State, Appalachian State, East Tennessee, Notre Dame, Bowling Green, Chicago, Washington, the Chargers, and the Panthers, Cardinals, Browns, Missouri, and then the Panthers again. This time as a head coach. But from all of these things, it's like he's a defensive-minded coach. So I'm pretty sure there's an NFL team out there that needs a coach or with the defensive mindset. I'm pretty sure he could find that spot for sure. If you had a guess of where he could potentially land or who you think should, go after him, who would you think?
I mean, that's kind of hard to say honestly, just because it's going to be one of those situations that we need to see which head coaches get hired, who he has the connections with to bring in. Because more than likely, I'd imagine he's going to be a defensive coordinator. I don't know if he'll get a head coaching job. Thanks, Sarah. I appreciate it. And we'll see. once the kind of head coaching dominoes fall, I think you can have a better understanding of where he could end up. Um, yeah, I mean it's tough to say right now, but there's definitely a place for him in the NFL, and he will land on his feet for sure.
All right. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Moving forward, let's go ahead before we get to the Colts. Let's talk about Frank Reich. Frank Reich, lost his job midseason with the Indianapolis Colts. Everyone knows, especially Colts fans, knew how that was going. In that situation with him and that team in general is just a dumpster fire. And he wound up losing his job, and that's when the whole Jeff Saturday thing started. And then eventually, Coach Frank Reich, he got his blessing, got a job with the Carolina Panthers. Just before we move into it, just share your thoughts about Frank Reich as a head coach.
Well, one, I think he's phenomenal. I think he's a phenomenal coach, and what he did here, having that winning record with, I mean, what was it? He was like 5 or 6 games above 500, and he had five starting quarterbacks in 5 years. I mean, I don't think people really realize just how truly difficult that is. And a lot of the stuff they got on him about was, the slow starts to the season and all that. But it's hard. I mean, that's to be expected when you're changing quarterbacks every single year. It takes time for those guys to gel with their receivers, with the cadence, with the offensive line. There's a lot that goes in to playing the quarterback position. And when you're constantly having to reset that every year, there's no continuity there. And what he did, I think, was remarkable. I believe almost every single year he had offenses ranked in the top 10 in DVOA. So to have that level of turnover at the quarterback position, to still be multiple games above 500, and to put together multiple top 10 offenses in that situation, that speaks to just how really great of a coach he is. And I think, his time here, unfortunately, it was kind of at an end just because he didn't really do himself any favors with the Carson Wentz thing. I think that was kind of where the train ran off the tracks. But outside of that, I mean, it's hard really to sit here and say Frank Reich's a bad coach because I think he evolved every year. And up until this last year, whenever everything just went bad. And even then, this was a 500 team before ownership stepped in, benched Matt Ryan, mandated that benching and mandated that he play Sam Ellinger. Because I think we all would agree that if he was going to bench Matt Ryan, he would have likely went to Nick Foles because the familiarity with him and Nick Foles. And it was unfortunate that that occurred. And you saw once he was gone and once he was out of the picture, this team just completely fell apart. And they were losing games in absolute historic fashion, pretty much. I mean, it was insane to watch the drop off. And so you can have basically, I mean, that's what a great head coach can do. You can take a roster that right now at the end of the season, the Colts were probably the worst team in football. They lost to the Houston Texans. I mean, that's the worst team in football. So you could say he took a team that was the worst team in football, went 1-7 down the stretch, and he made them a 500 team. And that just speaks to how great of a job he did. And I mean, it's unfortunate the way it ended, but I think if you can pair him with a young quarterback, allow them to grow together, he's one of the best quarterback mentors in all of coaching, college, high school, NFL, it doesn't matter. He's one of the best quarterback mentors for anybody. And if you compare him with a young quarterback, have some continuity there, over 2 to 3 years, and you see the growth. I mean, I think there's a lot of really great things that could happen down in Carolina for him.
I agree 100%. And I mentioned that before. A lot of people, they question his ability to coach and everything, but we mentioned how Frank Reich only had Luck for 1 year. And then after that, that's when Luck retired. So,
That was the best season of Luck's career.
and that was the best season of his career. And, that just goes to show, like, if you actually give him a franchise worthy type quarterback, and that's designed in the system, and then you have a guy like Frank Reich who just come off the Super Bowl that already has that championship mindset and knows what to do to get there. You can do a lot of things with the team. It doesn't matter who you have or what you can do. I mean, it's just all a part of his plan of what. And if you have a quarterback that can dialect in his system, I think that works very well. So it was just unfortunate for Frank. I would say, like I said, it was his time to end in Indianapolis anyway. We already knew it was coming because just how the coach direction was going. But like I said, I think if he had a young quarterback from the jump that stayed with him from the get go, I think he will still be a coach in Indianapolis till this day. So now that goes to my next question, and this is where you come in because we got to talk about your guy here, Will Levis. The Carolina Panthers right now just got an offensive minded coach who could be a potentially a quarterback whisperer, if you may say. And he's going into Carolina, and they have a very good, decent spot in the draft. But there is a way they can potentially move up in this draft and get a quarterback. And a lot of rumors are saying Will Levis may end at Carolina. What is your thoughts on Will Levis and Frank Reich in Carolina, and do you see that happening?
Um, honestly, like I'll answer the second part first. I don't see that happening. Just because I think Chicago. I mean, it all depends on the offer, of course. So if they come in and offer 3 or 4 first round picks, then yeah, Chicago is going to take that deal. But I don't know if they're going to do that drastic of an offer because the thing that the Colts have that's a leg up on everybody is they're still picking in the top 4. So Chicago can still move back. Indianapolis can move forward and still stay in the top 4 and get one of those, Jalen Carter, Will Anderson, one of those two, because we all expect Houston to take a quarterback. So, yeah, it's possible for sure. I think Arizona might be a more likely trade partner for them if Arizona wanted to drop back and grab a defensive player. And that, you wouldn't have to give up as much. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, Arizona to me would be more of a prime trade target because you would still be able to leapfrog the Colts if they stay put, get your quarterback, and not give up as much draft capital. And Arizona, I think, would be a lot more comfortable dropping back and picking up more picks because I think they're going through a rebuild as well with Kyler Murray possibly missing part of next year. I think they might just kind of use this year to rebuild and reload and then get back on track in 2024. So, yeah, and as far as him with Will Levis, I think it would be a fantastic fit. Obviously, the guy that for whatever I think it's a terrible comparison, but a lot of people compare him to Carson Wentz, and we saw what Carson Wentz was whenever he came into the league before the knee injury. He was on a pace to be MVP of the league, and Will is such a different type of person than Carson Wentz because Will is able to take, hard coaching and apply it. And he loves to be pushed and he loves to be challenged and he loves to, lead the locker room. He's such a strong leader in a locker room. And I think those are a little bit different than Carson Wentz, but I think Frank would do wonders for him and he would put him in a position to succeed. And that could be, to me, one of the best, if not the best landing spots for a guy like Will Levis, even for a guy like Anthony Richardson. That could be fantastic for those two prospects to land in. And what really worries me, though, is I saw something tonight about them possibly moving up and leapfrogging because of how high they have CJ Stroud ranked, possibly. And that would be my worries, them leapfrogging the Colts for CJ Stroud. So it's possible, for sure they could move up to 1. I think if they were to move up, it's more likely at the 3 spot. And we've heard that their owner is kind of enamored with getting a young quarterback this year, very similar to the Colts, where David Tepper is tired of the trades, for Sam Darnold and the trade for Baker Mayfield and constantly trying to take on other people's failures. I think he wants to go get his guy, to lead his franchise. So they're definitely a team that could leapfrog the Colts. So the Colts, if they want their guy, if they identify their guy in this draft, I can't stress this enough. You have to trade up to go get him. You can't let it fall to chance. And really, this all to me is dependent on who the Colts hire as head coach. So, yeah, it's interesting for sure. I do find it funny that not even 2 months removed from being fired from the Colts, that Frank Reich is the very first head coach hired because of how highly thought of he is around the league and the job that he did here with all the chaos. And it's funny, we've seen how divisive the Jeff Saturday stuff is within this franchise, and everybody's worried about Jeff Saturday, and you hear the news reports on national media every single day about Jeff Saturday. And yet the guy that they fired is the very first head coach hired in the new cycle. So it is kind of funny to see that happen.
Yeah, that's hilarious. While you were speaking, I was thinking about, Frank Reich was the guy getting interviews for potential head coaching spots in the Colts. I mean, he gets a job, and then you get Colts interviews that getting canceled. I think like it's still that notion around the league of that, the Colts isn't the easiest option to take as a head coach offer because of what you're getting yourselves into when you take the job. So it's going to be rough. A lot of head coaches and coordinators are getting their spots, but we just seen Dan Quinn go back to Dallas. So, it's leaving a few pieces left. I think we still got like 6 to 7 coaches that are available to take the position, including Jeff Saturday. So, besides him, I know we're all Morris fans when it comes to who you want as the head coach, but who would you want out of the rest of this list if it's not Morris, if you're going to say Morris as the head coach?
I would probably target either Brian Callahan from Cincinnati or Shane Steichen from the Eagles. Those would be the two that would be next up on my board. Um, it depends too if you're including D'Amico Ryans. Obviously, I'm not right now just because he hasn't rescheduled his interview. So until he does that, I'm under the assumption that he is not a candidate. But that could obviously change very quickly. Um, but looking at the guys that they more than likely will interview next week, it would probably be Shane Steichen and it would probably be Brian Callahan would be the two guys I would target.
Yeah, absolutely. Callahan, them guys cooking up something good over there, man. I definitely need some of that cooking over here, and it'll be like it'll be like I would say to me, it'd be like a recycle. It would be a repeat, basically. You get a coach from the playoffs, and you get them to come to Indy, and they have that same energy. But of course, we didn't. We had a franchise quarterback at that moment, so hopefully we'll have a franchise quarterback this time. So it'll definitely be interesting to see who gets called up and what they do with this whole Jeff Saturday scenario. So it's definitely going to be something interesting to look for. So go to the comment section real quick. Sarah Stain, please give me Raheem Morris. What up, Brian? He said, "Good for Frank. All the best." So yeah, man, it's gonna be questionable. Do you think there's any chance? Back to the Panthers. Do you think any chance Carson Wentz lands back in Carolina with Frank?
I mean, I'm not going to say there's a 0% chance because there's always a chance. I don't think it would be in a starting role. I think his failure in Washington this last year really kind of shut the door on him being a franchise quarterback that you give up assets for to, be your starting quarterback. He could possibly land there, very similar to Nick Foles in a backup role, and possibly help, mentor a young guy. Um, you, I mean, it's tough to say. So I'm not going to say 0% chance, but I honestly don't think it's likely. Just because I know their owner is tired of doing that kind of stuff, and if it was, it would be on a very minimal 1 year backup deal, and you would hope that you would not have to see him play any kind of football.
Hey man, that'd be good though. I mean, if you look at it, you got Carson Wentz and Carson Wentz Jr., Will Levis. Both of them gonna be there, so you can have your comparisons and your film, and you can say, "Hey, see, I told you Will Levis is better than Carson." That'd be perfect.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a can of worms right there for sure.
Definitely a can of worms. But hey, at least their owner, is standing up for what he doesn't like and what he does like, and he's actually letting the GM do their jobs. That's one thing. That's one thing we like from around here in the NFL, well, from the fan base, I would say, is letting the GM be the GM. So unfortunately, it's not like that over here in Indy. And going into the Colts, the second interviews coming up when Ursay is involved. Does that worry you at any chance?
Honestly, no, which is kind of funny to say. Like it doesn't. Just because I think there's enough out there now that, especially in the media, I know like you keep hearing the Jeff Saturday stuff, but you also hear we heard from Ian Rappaport today that if Jeff Saturday would get hired, there's a lot of head coaches in the league that I believe Rappaport said their heads would explode. And I'm not assuming that would be in like a shocking way. I think it would be in more of an anger way. Um, so I, I think he does like Jeff. I think he does want Jeff to be the head coach. I think he does, honestly. But I think he also is very aware of the optics of that move, how it would look for his franchise. And there's one thing Jim Irsay hates, and that's being embarrassed. And we even saw that this year, which is why he stepped in. I mean, they were embarrassed in New England, and he stepped in and started making the crazy changes. So he hates for his franchise to be viewed as an embarrassment, because that's what it was for so many years when he took over in the 80s and 90s. It was viewed as an embarrassing franchise, a bottom of the barrel franchise. And I think he is more aware than what people think of. If they do hire Jeff Saturday, even as much as he likes him, as much as he wants him, how that would be viewed in a full-time head coaching role, not an interim role. So I do think he steps back. I think he takes Chris Ballard's recommendations, and the 2 or 3 guys that Chris Ballard will recommend. I imagine there'll be at least 2 guys that Irsay will help choose from, and I don't think one of those 2 guys will be Jeff Saturday.
I sure hope not, because boy, a lot of did you sign that petition?
Did I sign it?
Yeah.
No, I'm staying away from that.
Oh, okay. I thought about signing it. It was like a web page on my computer. I was looking at it, but I was like, they don't need my vote. They already got 1,000. So, what's
Yeah,
your thought about the petition?
I mean, I see both sides of it, honestly. I mean, fans want to make their voices heard. That's their right. They can absolutely do something like that. Um, I don't really I don't really think it's the right move, just because it's such a drastic thing, and it's even now getting like national coverage. Like I even got a notification from Bleacher Report today about it. Like it popped up on my phone, and I'm like, good gosh. So I think there's better ways to go about it. Obviously, I think those ways are to be respectful to whenever to tweet Jeff Saturday. Like if you are in Jeff Saturday's comments, or not Jeff Saturday, Jim Irsay. If you're replying to Jim Irsay on Twitter, if you're tagging Jim Irsay in something, just be respectful about it. And while I think the petition, it wasn't really like mean spirited. I don't think. I mean, I don't view it as like that, but I do think it's a little overboard. And but like I said, at the end of the day, like fan is short for fanatic. That's why they're called fans. So it's their right. If they want to have their voice heard, if they want to put out something like that, then by all means, like, go ahead. I mean, you don't have to have me but if I did my name, yeah, I mean, like, fans, you want to get your voice heard, that's one way to go about it, for sure. So yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, man. I was gonna mention, you know how insane this fan base is. This is the same fan base when Schefter leaked Andrews' retirement in that preseason game. You know how they let their voices be heard that night, and they let their voices be heard about Saturday. They let their voices be heard about Frank Reich. They let their voices be heard about bringing Ty back. So I think they're pretty adamant of what they want and when they want to get it done. So I mean, this petition is only one step. I don't know what they're gonna do next, but if Saturday comes back, I'm scared. I'm saying, barricade the glass windows and everything if
Gosh.
Saturday comes back, because this fan base is crazy, man.
Which is kind of crazy to me too. Like, I know me and you, like, we talked about it a little bit, but it's crazy how somebody like Jeff Saturday, who 2 or 3 months ago, people were in love with it. I mean, like, that guy was a cherished member of this community, of the franchise, of the history. I mean, everybody loves Jeff Saturday, and now to see Colts fans going at each other's throats because of that guy, and even going at him and going at Jim Irsay, and the constant bickering. It's pretty wild to think about. That guy ended up being so divisive, but I also understand it, because Colts fans, like, they also know that, one, he's not qualified to do the job, and they saw in real time how this team performed with him as head coach. Obviously, there's extenuating circumstances there. He didn't have his staff. He didn't have this. He didn't have that. All that is very true, but that doesn't change the fact that they still had to play the game, and they underperformed on the field at historic lows. Like, this wasn't just like they were losing games by the skin of their teeth. I mean, they were
broke records.
Yeah, not the good kind of records. So yeah, I mean, it's sad, honestly, to watch so many fans I guess, go at each other and to go at owner in like a not respectful way. Like there's a lot of vitriol. I had to reach in the thesaurus for that one, but there's a lot of vitriol about about Jeff Saturday, and it's really divided this fan base.
Yeah, it did, man. It's insane, but he said I was okay with interim draft. I figured okay when the season ends, the real head coach would get picked. Now I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and see, I think that's what a lot of people were expecting too. Like, I don't think that's really off base. I thought they saw Jeff Saturday and they were like, "Well, he's being brought in to see, what's going wrong with the organization, what's, to get a firsthand look and report back to Ursay." And then after the season, he would tell Ursay his thoughts. They would hire an experienced head coach, a real head coach, which I still think they do. And yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody really viewed him as a real candidate. And the fact that it even is a possibility, it's really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So
yeah, it is. We seen Dan Quinn go back to Dallas and remain his position there. Was you ever interested in Dan Quinn being the coach for the Colts?
um I won't say like I would have hated it. I think there are worse options, namely the guy I just talked about.
Yeah.
Um and like if you didn't watch, I was actually on Saddle Up with Sean and Destin. Last night I was with Destin and me and him kind of talked about it a little bit, but people have this misconception about guys that were previous head coaches that failed, and or whatever their definition of failing is. Like I told Destin, I mean, like the guy coached a team to the Super Bowl, which obviously we all know the 28-3, they didn't win it, but at the same time, I mean, like they went to the Super Bowl. And that to me is successful. Anytime you have a head coach that gets to the Super Bowl, like that's successful.
And they
So,
had no place in being there. I just want to put that out. Nobody knew that the Falcons were going to make it to the Super Bowl.
well, I don't know. Like they were a really good team that year. They were a very good team, very good offense, and he did hire a lot of really good head coach, namely like Kyle Shanahan. Like he hired Kyle Shanahan, so I mean, he has a lot of connections. He has a chance to put together a really good staff. He's experienced, and also too, I think, like I said, people can grow from their last jobs, and we've seen it numerous times. Bill Belichick failed at his first job. Bill Parcells failed at his first job. Um, Pete Carroll failed at his first job. All these guys went on to win Super Bowls in their second gigs. Tony Dungy is another one. Like he was fired from Tampa Bay, went to the Indianapolis Colts, won a Super Bowl. So just because you're fired or you get let go from your previous job doesn't mean that there's not room for growth. It's the same way with players. I mean, players can go to different situations and different scenery and perform. It happens
Malik
all the
Hooker.
time. Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time in the NFL. So it's very the same way for coaches. Guys can learn from their mistakes. Guys can grow, and I think that's part of having the experience as a former head coach is you kind of know, and I know for a fact too, like that was one of the things that impressed Chris Ballard so much about Raheem Morris's interview. Just to give you a little peek behind the curtains on that, is Raheem Morris, like he didn't come in and make excuses. It wasn't, well, I didn't have this guy, I didn't have this guy, I didn't have my choice of this or anything like that. He came in and owned up to like, all of his failures and his past stops and what he's learned from those failures and how he would, do it differently now if he was to have a shot. And that really impressed Chris Ballard a lot that, he came in, he didn't make excuses, and it was really an impressive interview for him. So I think that's a lot of the reason why he is one of the, if not the leading candidate for this job for the Colts. So it'll be interesting to see that. But yeah, I mean, it things happen when you're a head coach. Same way with Frank Reich. We'll see if it happens. Maybe he's learned from what he experienced here in Indianapolis. Maybe he learned that, hey, maybe I don't want to have a new quarterback every year. So that's probably something I imagine he's going to look to change.
Yeah,
And
hopefully they give him full control of his staff too and what he wants to do.
yeah,
Like I said, Frank was
that
the
would be
last
my
minute
one.
option.
I think that would be my one worry with Frank Reich is once Nick Sirianni left, like he didn't necessarily hire the correct people around him, and people that would challenge him in the meetings and guys that would, consistently say like, "Hey, that's a good idea, but I think we should do this." There was a lot of, yes men and people that agreed with him. And I think that was ultimately part of his downfall as well as a head coach. So I think that could be something that he learned from, that, while it might not be comfortable to have people disagreeing with you and stuff, it's also necessary for growth, is, to have different opinions. If everybody's on the same page, that means nobody's looking for different ways to improve.
Yeah, absolutely agree, man. I'm looking forward to seeing what he's going to do with that coaching staff and with that team in general. But like I said, I think personally, I think that team, they're young and they have potential on offense, but I think their defense was stout. I think they led the league in turnovers at one point. So I think all they needed was really an offensive minded coach to just to pair with that defense they already got.
There's a lot of really good pieces in Carolina. There are. So I think if they can nail this quarterback selection, if they go out, whether that's trading for a guy, or what I assume is going to be drafting a guy, and I think there's a chance for a lot of success in that franchise going forward.
Yeah, I agree, man. Shout out to Tommy Tremble. Brian asks who mostly interviews and hires the coaching training staff, the head coach or the GM.
As far as like your position coaches and your trainers and stuff like that. Well, the trainers, I'm pretty sure like Indianapolis has have the same training and equipment staff for like almost 30 years. So those guys are generally hired. They can be hired from the head coach. A lot of the times they will be, but whenever you have an experienced staff in that building that's been there for as long as the Colts have, they're more than likely going to stick around. But as far as who hires the coaches, that would be the head coach. He's able to pick his staff, his position coaches, his, offensive, defensive coordinators, his, quality control coaches, assistants and all that. That all comes from the head coach. So, and a lot of that will be in collaboration with the GM. They'll kind of sit down together and, he'll give them a list and say, like, hey, these are the guys I want. Is there, can we make this happen? And then it's up to the GM, to take care of like the salaries and, you know, getting guys into the building and hired. That's up to the GM. But as far as who picks those guys, normally it's the head coach.
Absolutely, absolutely. Shout out to Jesse. He said Frank was a great coach, man. Literally went from Andrew Luck to basically a QB roulette and still managed to get big wins. He was willing to gamble a lot, always stood by him, and still will. Shout out to Jesse. We're still going to be doing that as well. We'll be with you rooting for the Panthers and their success. I'm still rooting for all former Colts players that didn't get their legit shot here in Indy and went on and prospered elsewhere. The Zach Pascals, the George Odoms of the world, the Malik Hookers, all of those guys. T.Y. Hilton eventually, they all left and they're all in the playoffs. So shout out to all of those guys. Even Kamoko Torres on San Francisco. So they're out there living their best lives, man. So shout out to them and shout out to Frank Reich, landing that job at Carolina. Definitely looking forward to seeing who's going to have a quarterback because that's going to say a lot moving forward to what he got, man. Especially if you get a young guy. That young guy is probably going to be potentially rookie QB of the year. I'm just going to book it. I'm going to put my bid in.
There's a
Whatever
good side of
quarterback he
that, man.
gets.
Frank Reich, man, like really up until this year with Matt Ryan, every single quarterback that Frank Reich had coached seen a pretty significant bump in production and efficiency. So it's very well known that he is, I know you said earlier, the quarterback whisperer. He is one of those guys, Andy Reid, Doug Peterson. And I think there's really a lot of parallels between what Jacksonville did and what Carolina's doing, hiring Doug Peterson, getting, to coach a young quarterback and to bring a culture to that team and, possibly end up winning a lot of football games. And I think it's very similar to what Carolina's trying to do.
I agree, man. You mentioned Jacksonville. I thought that was impressive because, most of if you asked me when I was talking about Jacksonville, I said that they were going to be the next team to win the division. And when they got Peterson, I said they were going to be better, but I didn't expect them to make the playoffs in the blink of an eye. I still thought the Titans were going to win the division this year, but of course, everything went from sugar to what. So, and the Jaguars just took over from there, and they've been successful ever since. And I'm scared of what they're going to do in the future. And then when you mention Frank Reich again, I always want to bring this up that when you look at Frank Reich at the beginning of the year and you've seen how Matt Ryan was struggling, what is one thing that Coach Frank did? He adjusted the offense to a hurry up offense. And the tempo was so much faster and it was so rapid that the offense would get gassed in the second half. And I thought that was one thing that was pretty impressive with Frank and Matt Ryan at the beginning when it was started off slow and he switched up the tempo to hurry up offense, which actually got the offense moving. And I
Mhm.
thought that was pretty impressive. What was your thoughts about that? Did you
Yeah,
see
I mean,
anything?
yeah, I agree. I mean, it's you all great coaches, they fit their scheme to their players. They don't fit their players to their scheme. And Frank Reich obviously had as much, you know, practice at that than anybody did, just because every year, every single year, he was having to adapt his scheme. And that's another reason why it was so hard and why you saw so many people, or not people, but like you saw so many of the players get off the slow starts because they were all learning basically a new system every year. While there was elements of the old system, maybe 60 to 70% of the playbook was the same. 30% of your playbook being changed on a yearly basis to fit your personnel, to fit your quarterback, that's a lot. And that's a lot of work for the players too. So yeah, I mean, I think that's something that he's shown that he can do at a very high level.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be impressive to see, especially if he gets a guy like, Will Levis to go into that RPO scheme that he got drawn up over there. It's gonna be a pretty sight, man. Especially with
That would be
Levis.
a perfect fit.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be a perfect fit for him, man. Definitely. What up, Brady? He asks, is Frank gonna take Bubba from us? There's very high chance he's gonna do so. And what does that leave the Colts? I'm gonna let you answer that, Landon. If Bubba goes, what does that leave to special teams? Because he's a great coach, man, and what he does with the special teams is unheard of, man. He definitely does get his flowers, but
Well,
do you feel that?
I'll say this too for Bubba. Like that was he has a much closer relationship with Chris Ballard, and Chris Ballard's the guy that hired him actually instead of Frank. Um, so I think there would be a good chance that Bubba would stick around. Bubba's still close to a lot of people in that building, a lot of the front office. He loves Indianapolis. Still, even after everything that happened, like he loves the team, he loves the city. He loves his job here, and he is closer to Chris Ballard. So there's definitely a very strong chance that Bubba Ventrone stays as special teams coordinator, and I'm hoping he does because that guy is one of the best, if not the best, special teams coach in all of football. So to lose a guy like him, but if he did go to Carolina, I think that would also be fantastic for him. I think he's going to succeed wherever he ends up. I'm hoping it's with the Colts, and I think there's a good shot he does end up sticking around here. But yeah, I mean that's just kind of how I view it. And that's like from talking to people as well, that I've talked to. Uh, there's a strong likelihood that Bubba possibly sticks around.
Oh, I wanted to know, did you notice that there's a former quarterback from the Colts that happens to be on the Carolina Panthers?
Is it PJ Walker?
Mm-mm. Somebody else.
Oh, somebody else.
Yeah.
Oh, who else is on the Panthers?
Jacob Eason.
Jacob. Oh, he is on the. I thought, yeah, because he got cut.
Yeah.
Hawks. Yeah.
Yep. He posted on his Instagram that they gave him like a team friendly deal or something like that. So he's gonna be back next year. So that should be interesting as well to see what he can do with Frank. Because he posted Frank getting signed to the Panthers on his Instagram story. I follow Jacob Eason still if you guys don't, so I thought that'd be interesting too to see how that pair goes if he actually can get a shot over there.
Yeah, I mean, I still think he's much more of a practice squad guy. I mean, he's still got a long way to go, and we even saw that some in Seattle whenever he played this past season. He's still got a long, long, long way to go. But yeah, I mean, it'll be comfortable for him coming into a situation where he's going to be really familiar with the playbook. He's already learned it, and he could possibly even help teach some of the other guys the playbook as well. So that'll be a good thing for him.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Jacob Eason, man. Shout out to Jacob Eason. We always had that Sam Ellinger Eason debate back in the day, and it's good to see that he still got a job going. So yeah, facts, Brady. Eason's over there living it up. Rochelle's in with the Raiders still. So yeah, man, that's definitely gonna probably wrap up the stream today. It was just a quick recap on Frank Reich going to Carolina and how does that affect the Colts moving forward with the draft spots and everything. We already discussed pretty much everything. So if you guys are catching this post stream, let's go ahead and start from the beginning. It's only 40 minutes. Go do some dishes and listen to the stream while you're doing that, and then pretty much take up most of your time. I don't know how many dishes you got, but is there any last words, Landon, before we head up out of here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like everything's kind of taken off now. Some dominoes have started to fall with some other coaches. I think you're going to see a situation where Denver is going to be making an announcement within the next couple of days. Carolina's obviously made their announcement that the dominoes are starting to fall. So I think you're going to see a few more interviews early next week and possibly even a decision by the middle of next week, going into the end of next week from the Colts. So we only got a short time left before all this is resolved, for better or for worse. Who knows? But we're in the end game now. To quote Marvel, there we're in the end game. So, yeah, just stick tight, stay with us here at the Blue Stable. We'll have any news that we get, we'll be on here, and it's going to be fun for sure. Maybe we'll see.
Is it fun? You just mentioned the end game. Is this before or after the Thanos snap?
Oh, this is before Thanos snaps.
Oh my gosh, this is gonna get worse.
This
It's
is
gonna get
before.
worse.
Well, no, I take that back. I think Thanos. I think the snap was mid-season when Ursay made all those
Oh
crazy.
yeah, when he fired Frank,
Yeah,
got
Frank,
Jeff
brought in Jeff
Saturday.
Saturday. I think, yeah, that was the snap. You saw coaches disappearing. Like Spider-Man was. There was like three, three guys got fired, or two got fired. One ended up leaving, going to college. So people started disappearing in the building. So yeah, I think we're on our way back. We just need our Tony Stark, Chris Ballard, to save us from another snap that's even worse than the one we just witnessed earlier a few months ago. So,
There ain't
um,
gonna be no snap, but there's a Kang coming around, and I guess that's the Jacksonville Jaguars. I guess they Kang the Conqueror, so
oh,
who knows?
yeah, maybe Trevor Lawrence in the Conquer.
Yeah, Kang the Conqueror, Trevor Lawrence. I don't know, but that was definitely a good analogy to bring up Marvel and the Colts. And they're sponsored with Marvel,
Yes,
so I think that's
sponsored with Marvel. So, yeah,
I think that's perfect. Wow,
yeah.
that's crazy to think. But yeah, that's pretty much gonna wrap it up. You guys, I don't know if we're still gonna be next week is gonna be a little hectic week for us. So I don't know if we're still gonna be posting next week or not. But we'll be back the week after because we're gonna have a
Oh yeah,
live.
there's not a single chance that we're not going live from the Senior Bowl. Me and you throwing it down next week together. Possibly, you know, we're staying with some good friends of ours too. So who knows who might make an appearance while we're there on the live stream. You never know. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun next week. But yeah, I mean, like I said, there's a good chance also that this decision gets made next week, and we have a head coach, at this time next week. There's a shot at that. So if there is, then yeah, we'll be going live. We'll be covering everything, even while we're down at the Senior Bowl, and we're really excited for sure. Or at least I am. I don't know if Marcus is excited
Oh
about it.
yeah, I'm excited for sure. I'm just brainstorming ideas of what I want to do to probably troll you guys or entertain the crowd while I'm there. So all of that's going through my head. I've been pre-planning for like weeks now, and I still didn't find out a solution or what I want to do. So yeah, I will come up with an idea. So you guys have to stay tuned. Subscribe if you haven't, like and comment as well. We're gonna spoil you guys with Senior Bowl and draft content in the future. Hopefully the Super Bowl is over by the time we get back. So we'll post you guys. So you gotta stay posted. The Orioles in spring. You got the Orioles in spring. I guess this is baseball talk, spring training. So
I mean, like,
I guess that's why he mentioned that, huh? With the hat on.
I got the Orioles in the spring. Yeah, hey, I'm ready for Cardinal season.
Yep.
It's always baseball season around here. So
Okay. So yeah, we'll see that. So you guys have to stay tuned. Turn on those notices so whenever you know when we drop some content, you guys will know when we up. So appreciate everyone that tuned in tonight. Again, congratulations to Frank Reich on landing the job. Hopefully the Colts can get a coach in here that's not named Jeff Saturday. We love you, Jeff, but it's not time. So we'll see how that goes. But that's Landon. This is Culture Shock, and we are out.